Okay, so say you were happy with this shape, and off camera I just went ahead and tweaked this a little bit further. I didn't do anything that we didn't cover in the recorded parts. I just continued to grab and smooth and inflate around until I had something that looks roughly the way I want it. So to wrap up this demo, you can be as detailed as you like, but I do want to touch on surface texturing, just because we created this model with the dynamic topology option in Blender, and that has allowed us a lot of flexibility for creating a interesting silhouette, but it actually kind of restricts our ability to get finer details in here. You certainly can sculpt in things like bark with dynamic topology on, but I personally like to do those types of surface textures using the multi-res modifier. So let's take a look at how we can get this model from the dynamic topology to the multi-resolution modifier, and that way we can, switch between both and utilize both to our advantage. So right now, this is our model. I have just come out of sculpt mode. I haven't done anything to it. So you'll see that as a result of the dynamic topology, we have some less dense areas here, some very dense areas over here. It's not really even all the way around, and it is all in triangles, which this will cause an issue for our multi-res because it will not be able to subdivide evenly. So let's come back into sculpt mode on this object really quick. And let's come out to our remesh options at the top here. And let's just see what happens when we remesh at the default voxel size of 0.1. Okay, so nothing really appears to have changed on the screen, but if we go into edit mode now, we'll see that our mesh is a much lower resolution and it has these smoothed out, largely quadrilateral faces. There are some areas where, the smoothness doesn't retain all the way around, but it is a lot smoother than it was. So what we can do from this point is go back into sculpt mode, and let's add a multi-res modifier. We can subdivide it, maybe twice. And you'll notice that these subdivisions get longer and longer to calculate as you up-res. That is just a performance hit that you are taking from having so many points on a single mesh. Okay, so now that we have our multi-res modifier set up, we can just start sculpting as we were before. So let's grab the clay strips brush. And I'm just going to gently brush down the side of the tree here to create a sort of bark-like texture. Okay, so now we have the beginnings of a sort of a bark texture on at least this portion of our trunk. So now, because we have the multi-res modifier set up, we can come down and turn down our sculpt level preview. And now if we see any parts of the shape that are not working for us, like this part right here, I do not like. I need to change the shape of this. Now if I just come down to 0 in the sculpt, I can come in here and make whatever edits I need to make without worrying about negatively affecting that nice bark surface texture I just drew on. Let me come in here and just quickly adjust this. Okay, so say that I like that a lot better. So now, just to get that bark texture back, all I have to do is up-res using these arrows, and you'll see it's painted perfectly over it, even over the spot that I edited. Just inflating to grab out that part where the mesh got a little pinched. I can smooth just the end to taper it. And grabbing and adjusting. So unfortunately the remeshing process isn't 100% accurate. When you get to these smaller portions of your mesh, like up here, you may see that you have errors. And that is, you know, from the remeshing process. So you just have to come in here and smooth these out. So I'm just going to grab my clay strips once again, and with a light pen pressure, I'm just coming in and drawing strokes along these branches to sort of suggest the grain of the wood. And then when you get up to really thin pieces like this, you might get sort of errors where your brush is pulling in the points from the other side. So you just need to adjust your brush size or mask that back face. So yeah, it'll pull in like this if your brush size is too large and your mesh is too thin. You can come in and smooth it to fix it. Your smooth is basically your eraser tool for sculpting. And then you can just redraw over it, maybe inflate these so they don't get caught on each other quite so much. And then you can continue texturing with your clay strips. So there again, I was too zoomed out and the mesh was too thin, and it just caught some of those back faces and pulled them all the way through. It is just sort of the nature of the program, and that error is present even in other 3D sculpting programs. Never hurts to, when you're working on these thinner sections, just make sure that every so often, every few strokes or so, you're checking that back face to make sure it didn't get caught, so you don't have to undo through a bunch of work. Just briefly dropping down to the 0 subdivision level to fix some of these shapes here. And then coming back up to the highest subdivision level to continue the surface. And then I can already tell that this section is going to give me some problems because of how thin and pinched it is. So I'm just going to jump straight into the inflate tool and try to inflate and smooth it out so it is not quite so distorted. You'll also notice that when I use the grab tool in the higher subdivision level, it's also just harder to grab smooth shapes. You get a lot of these sort of bumps, and that's just because the topology is so dense right there that you're not grabbing enough of it really. So larger scale changes, you always want to drop down a subdivision or two, just so you can avoid this really lumpy sort of look. I mean, unless you're going for a sort of, old and gnarled tree, and then you might want it to be lumpy. So for this, I'm actually going to grab the fill tool because it's just gotten really extreme with these sort of peaks and valleys here, and I want it to be a little bit smoothed out, and it doesn't seem to be able to accomplish that with the smooth tool I've been trying to use. So we're gonna get the fill tool in here, and when you get things like this, it's just sort of an artifact of hopping between subdivision levels and making changes especially on like smaller portions of the mesh. So don't worry too much about it. You can fix it usually just by holding shift and smoothing it out. And it may be the case that we just don't have enough geometry here to really get this perfectly smooth. And that's okay. It's an organic form anyway, and it does not need to be smooth in this case. No one's really going to question if, you know, a branch sticking out of a tree is a little gnarled. And I just don't think it is worth the resolution increase to the rest of the mesh at this point. So we can leave it. Just holding control and drawing with the clay strips to get an inset instead of an out. Again, got some artifacts right here. Just inflate and smooth and inflate and smooth and alternate between those two until it is fixed. So obviously you can continue with this surface all the way up through the branches if you like, or, you know, you could add sort of clusters of branches and get as detailed as you like with this. And if you want to sort of finalize all these sculptural changes, you can do so by applying the multi-res modifier if you have one, which again is applied the same way that you would apply any other modifier. And now all of these changes, including the bark texture, are part of the mesh. So again, you could spend a lot more time on this and make it, you know, exactly how you want it, but just want to take a moment to appreciate how far we have come already. And, you know, we started out this course by making a tree, and we've made a tree again here now, and it has just come so far as detail and what we are able to accomplish with it. I mean, if we want to compare them, we can go to File and Append. And we just have to navigate. If you saved that file, we just need to navigate to where it was saved. And then find that .blend file in the file browser. And it should open up all these sort of file folders that are within your .blend file. If you just want to go to Object, and this is another reason why you want to name things. You can easily find one of our tree objects and append it into Blender. So let's come in over here because that was its location in the world in our first demo video where we built out the city street. So let's just scale this up so they're roughly the same size and we can compare. Look, the difference just between a few videos, we can get from something as simplistic as this to something as complex as this. So just take a moment to appreciate that for yourself. And in the next video, we're going to continue on with even more advanced sculpting. And we're going to learn how to sculpt with Asymmetry, which will allow us to create characters, faces, etc.